Hello, Taylor Ellwood here, and welcome to the Magical Experiments live stream today. And today's topic is on fear, and it came about because I got a comment on a previous post. So I want to read that comment first to give a little bit of context here. The person said, um, like you say, you could lose it all in a moment, and if I can't cope with a minor crisis, what hope? What hope when shit hits the fan? Fear about what could happen and doubts I will have the strength to handle just makes it easier to procrastinate another day rather than face problems. Better to banish those thoughts of future fear. I'd love to hear your thoughts on that topic. So this is kind of an interesting thing, future fear, and so I thought I would just do the topic overall on how to handle fear and how to treat fear as an ally or as an enemy, because fear is an emotion that we all deal with. I want to normalize that because I experience fear. Sometimes I experience it a lot, sometimes I experience it a little, but either way, I've had experiences of fear, and I think fear is a pretty consistent part of living life. And as magicians, we need to know how to handle fear. We need to know how to address fear when it comes up and how to resolve it and work through it instead of letting it control us. And that can be a very intimidating experience sometimes, especially because in the world around us, so often with the social media world and just people in general, we see people who quote unquote seem to have it together, right? They've got their act together. They never do anything wrong. They're always on top of things. But I think that if you were to discover some truths about them, one of the truths you would discover is that they're afraid too. And sometimes their fear comes up in the form of their attempts to be perfect. But I've never met anyone who's perfect, and I think that I'm certainly not a perfect person. And one of the things that I've come to recognize is that fear can play a significant role in the way that we show up in our lives. It can sabotage us, it can stop us from following through on things, it can get in the way of stuff and cause us to procrastinate. It can freeze us in place. And I've had those experiences. I experienced that feeling of fear earlier this week, actually. I experienced it, I guess it would be last Thursday. I experienced this sharp feeling of fear. And it was hard, but I worked through it. It took a good part of the day to get through it, and but at the end of the day, I was still alive. I was still doing things, and that was the thing that I came to realize is like that I've come to recognize about fear is that fear as an emotion and experience, it's there for a reason. It's there to quote unquote protect us. We learn we experience fear because fear is there to protect us from moving away from our comfort zone. But the problem is it's not a very good mechanism for that. I mean, fear really is great under a life-threatening circumstance. It can be good, but under the majority of everyday circumstances, fear is not necessarily a good thing, and it can stop us from following through on plans and objectives and ideas and things because we're putting ourselves out there. So, I think it's important to recognize that, and at the same time recognize that there is a reason fear is in place. Fear is in place because it is there to protect us. It is there to serve us. It is there to perform a specific function in our lives. It doesn't occur in a place of vacuum, and I think that's a huge thing to acknowledge and recognize right there. And sometimes what I've discovered is that people will try to repress their fear, try to push it down, try to control it as much as possible, and that doesn't really help. So I want to give you a couple thoughts on how to handle fear and a technique or two today in this video so that you can move forward and recognize how fear can become an ally instead of being a sabotage. Before we get into that, I just wanted to note that if you are new to this channel, go ahead and click subscribe. Click on the bell notification so you get notified when I go live. And let's proceed forward. So we understand that fear is a mechanism for survival. It is there for a reason. We're not going to be able to get rid of it. And trying to push it down and get rid of it is actually doing ourselves a disservice. We don't need to do that, and we don't want to do that. What we do want to do is we want to allow ourselves to fully recognize the fear that we're feeling in the moment and give ourselves permission to feel it and work through it instead of allowing it to control us. This means that we're going to have to really be open to the reality that we're going to feel fear. We're going to feel a sense of fear. And how fear shows up in our body is a really important thing to pay attention to. For example, does it show up in your chest or does it show up in your belly? Does it show up any other parts of your body? I want you to take a moment right now and just check in with yourself. If you're feeling fear today, and you might not be, but if you are feeling fear, where is that fear showing up in your body? Okay. And so allow yourself to check in with that because if you're feeling fear in a specific part of your body, then you know that is where fear typically shows up. Now, with checking in with that, how does that fear feel? Does it feel heavy? Does it feel sharp? Does it feel blunt? Does it feel like something else? Does it feel hot or cold or anything along those lines? The reason we're doing this is because we want to be able to identify the way that fear specifically shows up as a physiological reaction in our bodies. So sit with that for a moment. And when you're cognizant of what that fear feels like, the next thing I want you to do is I want you to ask yourself, um, when you're feeling that fear, what is the first thing that occurs? What is the first reaction? Do you freeze up? Do you want to run away? Do you want to procrastinate? Or do you want to otherwise do you try to suppress it or ignore it? Okay. And so just allow yourself to take a deep breath and I want you to breathe in to that feeling of fear. So take a deep breath with your nose, in through your nose and then out. So we're going to do a deep breath right now. And I want you to feel the emotion. Allow yourself to lean into the emotion. What is it that you're feeling with this fear? Feel it physically. And ask yourself this: is this physical feeling going to actually come true? Is this physical feeling going to end my life? You might say, wow, Taylor, that's putting the stakes pretty high, but it's important because, again, remember, fear is a survival mechanism. We're feeling fear because some part of us feels like our survival is threatened. So we need to ask ourselves, is my survival really threatened? So take a deep breath in. As you're feeling that fear, open yourself up to feeling whatever else is coming up with that fear. Is there an underlying thought or emotion? Do you feel, for example, are you feeling like, is the fear telling you you can't do this, or that that you're going to fail, or that you've got to keep yourself small? Whatever it is, okay, that's what the fear is telling you. Now we ask ourselves, well, where did that message come from? Usually that message came from a situation in our lives where something happened and we came up with that fear mechanism as a response to navigate that situation. And I'll share one for me. One of the things that I have done with my fear in the past is I have let my fear keep me small. And the reason for that is because when I was growing up, I had experiences with my father where he basically I would start to shine and he would tell me I was a disappointment, or try to basically he was trying to get me to conform to his desires and expectations and wishes. Well, I took that mechanism moving forward to keep myself small in an attempt to keep myself safe. But did it really keep me safe? The answer is no. What it did do is it kept me from a lot of powerful experiences that I could have had earlier in my life. When I started to recognize this on all the different levels and how fear was showing up, that's when I began to change my relationship with fear. So now what I do two things with fear. The first thing I do is I do a visualization with fear where I imagine myself on my deathbed, the older version of me. So we're talking about future fear here. How do you deal with that? Well, imagine yourself on your deathbed. Here's your future self. Your future self is on the deathbed, and he or she or they gets up and they say, Taylor, or your name anyway, I want you to know that if you let this fear stop you, you're going to have X, Y, and Z not happen. You're going to miss out on these opportunities, or you're going to wish that you asked that pretty person out on a date, or whatever it is, right? You're using that deathbed version of yourself as a motivator to do something. And again, you might say, well, geez, I mean, that sounds like you're using fear as a motivator. Well, yes, we are, because the thing is people try to escape from fear, but you can't escape from fear. Fear is part of life. Fear is a normal part of life. What you can do is you can turn fear into an ally. And that's what we're doing here. So work with that deathbed version of yourself. And that deathbed version of yourself is saying, hey, look, you're going to miss out. Fear, you're going to experience FOMO. You're going to miss out on this opportunity. You're going to miss out on this chance. You're going to miss out on these things. So you've got to take action. What that's going to do is that's going to motivate you to push through, to use the fear to push through the resistance that you're feeling. Because fear, a lot of times, is really masking resistance. But when you turn fear around and you turn it into a motivator, it helps you push through that resistance. And so what is the resistance? Well, the resistance is usually around like what you fear the outcome will be. And the irony of it all is that fear becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy when you let the outcome get dictated by the fear that you're feeling. So if I feel fear and I'm letting that fear control me, and I'm not doing anything with it to motivate me, then I'm going to use it to keep me small, as an example. But if I feel that fear and I listen to the deathbed version of myself, and the deathbed version of myself says, Taylor, you've got to go and do this action, then it's going to allow me to take the fear and use it to overcome the resistance and turn the resistance into momentum that actually allows me to move forward. This is one of the things that I do on the days when fear is really strong. I will start listening to my deathbed version of myself and say, hey, what do you need to do to turn things around here? The other thing that I like to do is when I'm feeling fear about something, what I will do is I will allow myself to feel into the fear, and I'll turn the fear into energy. And instead, what I'll do is I'll turn that energy into fuel for whatever it is, for a magical working. So whatever it is, it's going to help me actually take that situation and manifest what the desired outcome into reality. So if I'm feeling fear, for example, about promoting myself or putting myself out there, what I'll do is I'll take that energy of fear around putting myself out there, and I will actually turn it into fuel for a magical working that is designed to help me put myself out there. So the fear ends up becoming fuel for the experience. And so the more fear I feel, the more it fuels the experience, and the more it actually basically helps to push me out of this cycle where I was stuck here. Now I'm being moved out of it and moved into the direction that I want to go into, that's going to help me manifest my desired result. And here's a secret to life. If you want to turn something into a reality, you have to take action. And it's not just magical action. Magical actions help, but mundane actions do as well. How do you do that? You work through whatever is coming up that's getting in your way, and you use it to push you forward. And those are a couple ways that I have. Those are a couple techniques that I've worked with um, to help me move forward out of fear and move into a positive direction. So if you're feeling future fear, fear around something that's coming up in the future, turn that fear into fuel. Imagine yourself on your deathbed telling yourself something about that situation, and use that as motivation to help you stop procrastinating, help you stop freezing, or whatever it is that the fear is causing you to do. Turn that fear into energy that actually pushes you forward into the situation. And I will say that some of these practices are things that I've only recently really begun to do, but they have changed my life. In the last eight or so months, I've really radically keyed in on certain practices that I can use that allow me to push to move forward into my life and move forward into doing the things that I really want to do instead of continually justifying and stopping myself. And I'm not going to pretend that I succeed every day, because I don't. There are some days where it is a struggle even now. These practices, these techniques take time, they take work. So I'm not promising you a magic bullet here, okay? I want to be very clear about that. Now, one thing I will say is you can check out some of my classes through my Teachable, which you can find in a link below the video, or if you go to the Magical Experiments website, you can check those classes out. I have some classes that can help with some of these things. But the most important thing is that at the end of the day, you help yourself. You turn fear into an ally, turn fear into a source of fuel. Use it as a way to help you move forward in your life. You can do this, and I believe in you. And I hope that you will take this and move forward. And thank you again for the person who left the comment on the video. I always like it when people leave comments about things that they like me to share, because that helps create more content, and it helps me serve you as well. And I want to do that. And again, if you need help, feel free to reach out. Reach out for a tarot reading, reach out for a magical working, reach out for an entity. I provide all these services and more, and I'm always happy to help you out. All right. Have a great day, everyone. Take care.